Hello, and welcome to the first OpenFeature online user group meeting of 2024. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season and that your new year is going great so far. I'm Stacy Potter, a community manager for the OpenFeature project, and we're hoping to have these OpenFeature user group sessions monthly going forward, and they'll be education-based webinars that we hope will bring you valuable content from basics to deep dives on feature flagging and the entire OpenFeature ecosystem and so much more. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Maclean, developer advocate at DevCycle. Andrew will be diving into some basics of feature flagging, but first, I'd like to take care of some housekeeping items. So if you're new here, OpenFeature is an open specification that provides a vendor-agnostic, community-driven API for feature flagging that works with your favorite feature flag management tool or in-house solution. As of December 2023, we are now an incubating project within the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. If you'd like to connect with us or get started with OpenFeature, you can find us on all the usual channels: GitHub, the website, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, CNCF Slack. We're either usually at Open-Feature or just the word OpenFeature squished together. And I'll note here that if you're interested in events like these, be sure to join our OpenFeature community chapter within the CNCF. That's the link at the very bottom of your screen, as this will notify you when we have events or meetings scheduled. So for today, we've bookmarked 1 hour for today's session. We may not go that long, but we do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So today's session is also being recorded. We'll be emailing you the link, or you can find it on that CNCF OpenFeature community chapter page. We'll post it there as well. So any questions that you have, you can feel free to put them in the Zoom chat at any time, and then I'll circle back at the end and propose those to Andrew once he's done presenting. Otherwise, I think that's it for my few intro slides. Andrew, I will hand it over to you and you can kind of take over sharing.
Amazing. Thanks, Stacy. How's your day going so far?
Great. How about you?
It's not going too bad. It's the start of the day here, so it's I always like to start my day with a presentation and just like really live off of that high for the rest of the day.
Love it. Well, it's the start of my afternoon, so it's the great way to kick off the hour after lunch.
Well, thank you so much, Stacy, for having me. Thank you so much to the OpenFeature community for being here. I'm psyched that I get to start off the first of these OpenFeature user groups. And I thought that I would start this off as much as I could on like a really high note and bring as much energy as I possibly could to sort of kicking things off. And I always love to kick things off with kind of a little like, why does this matter for you? And so I thought today I would channel my inner Billy Mays. And if Billy Mays, you're not somebody there that you're aware of, Billy Mays is like a really, really famous infomercial guy, really famous for like, but wait, there's more in OxyClean. I'm going to try and do the same thing for feature flags for you today. And so let's like really kick things off. So here we go. I'm going to get into my Billy Mays era and my Billy Mays zone. So what if I told you that there was a single development strategy that could help you seamlessly control application behavior, rapidly address bugs and performance glitches, adapt content to regional regulations, introduce updates in controlled phases, personalize user interactions, and implement effective A/B testing? What might you call such a game-changing resource? You might call it the No More Oops protocol, a bug buster's best friend, a developer's Swiss Army knife, code control sorcery, the panic button avoider, miracle as code. How about feature flags? All right, I feel like I got my Billy Mays in there. So welcome everybody to this first online user group meeting. My name's Andrew, and I'm super excited for today's talk. There's a flag for that, a developer's primer on feature flagging. So in today's talk, we're going to go through a bunch of different things. I'll tell you a little bit about me, but then we'll jump into the meat of things that we're here for today. A little bit around what are feature flags, why do feature flags matter, how are they managed, who's using them, how OpenFeature fits in, and actually we're going to get a not live demo. I wish that it was a live demo. We're going to get a recorded demo of how OpenFeature works. And then I'm going to share a few resources that can help you discover places to learn a little bit more about feature flagging. All right, so let's kind of jump into the stuff that's a little bit of background. Why am I here? How did I end up in this feature flag space? So I actually started my career back in 2010, not in the tech space at all. I'd gone to school to be a forensic scientist, so all the CSI stuff, and that didn't work out. But I loved working with young people. I loved education, and so I started working as a youth outreach worker back in 2010. Around 2015, I switched into outreach, but specifically focused in the university market on outreach around engineering and trying to bring in new folks into this awesome industry that we all work in. And sort of during that time, I said, I wonder what this is looking like in the classroom for sort of people that are going into university. And so I went back to school, got my teaching degree just in time for the pandemic to hit in 2020, when I was lucky enough to sort of enter this world of developer relations and developer advocacy, first as a community manager with Battlesnake, and then Battlesnake was acquired back in 2023 by DevCycle, which is a feature flag management platform. And we'll talk all about that in just a minute. Now, back to kind of the meat of why you're here. You're here for a primer on feature flagging. So if you don't know, or even if you do, maybe this is a different way to be presented to you, what are feature flags? So let's look at kind of the idea of feature flagging as a whole first. So feature flagging is a software development technique that allows you to modify system or application behavior without changing any source code. And we'll look at exactly what that looks like in a minute, but kind of at a core level, feature flags are able to do a lot of things because of the way that they work. They allow you to activate or deactivate specific application functionality, again, without changing that source code. They allow you to control visibility of certain features, or they can actually allow you to change the behavior of a feature based on some set conditions. So what does a feature flag look like in code? So here's an example of a really, really, really simple JavaScript feature flag setup. And so you can see here, there's sort of two pieces. The first is the actual feature flag configuration, that new feature constant there that's actually pulling its value from an environment variable called new underscore feature. And then below, we actually have our application logic where we're implementing that feature flag configuration, where if that new feature variable is set to true, then it's going to show in your console log, my feature is on, my new feature is on, and otherwise it's going to show old feature is on. So at its core, this is really what feature flagging is all about. A feature flag is just a conditional statement that toggles on specific functionality based on a configuration. Now, obviously, this is probably not what most of your feature flags are going to look like, but if you've ever implemented something like this in your code, you've actually probably been doing feature flags without even recognizing it. So we're going to talk a lot about use cases, but I thought a really great way to sort of build up to that was to kind of look at some different types of feature flags. And these kind of are flags that are different ways of using and implementing feature flags based on a bunch of different use cases. So first up, we have sort of what you might think of as like the traditional feature flag use case and type, which is a release flag. And this is a flag that's used to separate a feature from a code deployment. So this is sort of exactly what we saw in that example there. We have both of our features in the code, and we're using that configuration to decide whether or not we're releasing that new feature. The second type of feature flag is an experiment flag. So you saw earlier I was talking about A/B testing. This is kind of where an experiment feature flag might be used. And this is sort of a flag that sends users down specific pathways to test different functionality. So again, similar implementation as that release flag, but kind of just a different use case. And there's a slightly different setup that you might need for an experiment versus a release flag. Another kind would be a permission flag. So this is where you're looking to gate features based on individual user properties. So maybe you want to test something out in a specific geography, or maybe you only want to show something to a specific user if they're a paid user. That's what a permission flag would be. And then finally, we have things that are operations flags. So these are flags that are being used to protect performance around systems and services. This might be if you're like refactoring a microservice or something along those lines. Now, these sort of types of feature flags are actually really, really well outlined and are actually adapted from this great article over on martinfowler.com. If you Google feature toggles, aka feature flags, and Martin Fowler, you'll find this. And it goes kind of really deep into all of these different kind of feature flags and kind of why we bucket all of the different use cases into these 4 types. Great. So we know what feature flags are, and we know what they look like, and we kind of know roughly what the different types are, which kind of feeds into this question of why do feature flags actually matter? So the question of why they matter, I think use cases are great, but I actually really like to look at this idea of coding with feature flags by looking at sort of the pattern, the opposite side of that coin of what feature flags aren't, or what coding without feature flags is like. And here's a great analogy, or at least a good, maybe it's just an analogy, and I'll let you determine if it's good or not. So coding without feature flags is kind of like walking across a high wire without a safety net. So even if you've done everything right and you've tested in staging and in your testing environment, you really have no idea about functionality working in production until it's too late. And if those bugs are there, then you're really in a rough position if you want to get back without having to do a full deployment. Now, coding without feature flags is also kind of like, from like a process standpoint, kind of like being stuck in the checkout line at a grocery store if you're a developer. So with traditional development, especially if you're doing branch-based development and having to have long-lived branches, you're kind of having to wait for others to finish their tickets before you can complete and merge your own. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of kind of merge errors and issues, and you're really going to reduce a lot of that productivity that you could have. So great. Coding without feature flags is bad, Andrew. That's what you're saying. Coding with feature flags must be better. And I like, instead of kind of saying coding with feature flags is, and I think that would be a logical way to go here. I kind of want to just like focus on like one thing that touches on a lot of things that feature flags really enhance for developers. And I think the major thing that they really enhance in a huge, huge way is this idea of continuous integration and continuous deployment. So CI/CD, this idea of empowering teams to deliver frequently and to automate a lot of the processes around building and testing and deployment. Coding with feature flags really enhances that process. So it enriches those modern DevOps practices by enabling a couple of really important things. And we kind of touched on them a little bit in the use cases that we talked about, even in my little Billy Mays thing before, but really good to highlight some of these great things that they enhance in this idea of DevOps. So one of the great things they do is they decouple this idea of a deployment from a release. So new code is constantly deployed without immediately being live to users. So while normally you might roll out a new feature only when it's ready in a full deployment, here you actually have all of your features kind of in your code at all times, and you're deciding whether or not to show them to somebody based on your feature flags that are in the system. Testing in production is another great way that feature flags enrich this DevOps practice. And this is where we're looking at permitting features to be evaluated in a real world environment without being visible to all users. And when I say real world, yes, we all do our best to make sure that our staging environment is set up exactly like our production environment, but sometimes you really just want to be able to test in production. With feature flags, you can decide who sees that code in production and therefore allow you some real-time testing in production instead of sort of hoping that you're testing in a production environment. And then another great thing that feature flags do is provide rapid issue mitigation and recovery. So they provide you with that swift mechanism for disabling features that are causing problems. There's no build process. There's no sort of worrying about making sure all the checks and balances are in place and potentially waiting 10, 15, 20 minutes for that deployment to go out. With a feature flag, it's as easy as going to your feature flag management platform or going wherever that configuration is stored, toggling off that feature, and it is going to be off for everybody. So great ways that feature flag enhance that development process, and specifically a lot of these DevOps processes focused around this idea of CI/CD and really focusing on productivity. Okay, so I gave you some sort of top level use cases there. So we're talking about DevOps, and that's a great use case if you want to kind of switch from branch based development over to trunk based development. Great use case for feature flags. In fact, it's one of the main things that you need if you're going to move over to trunk based development. But there are some other like really great use cases that I think are great examples of why feature flags are really helpful and matter. So first one, beta testing. You can allow users to opt in for a specific feature and collect that feedback from them really, really easily. Looking at things like canary releases and dark launches. So if you want to deploy to a small subset of your users, feature flags and a feature flag management kind of platform or system really allow you to do that in a super meaningful way. Progressive delivery, things like timed rollout. So if you're looking to roll out a new feature to your entire user base, but you want to do it slowly just to make sure that it's all working before it's kind of going fully live, feature flags are a key component in making that happen. Other things here kind of feeding into the beta testing, things like product experimentation, this data-informed experiences to drive things like NPS. We're also looking at things like kill switches, which we already talked about. So whether you're in DevOps or marketing or sales or anything, you can disable or enable features without needing engineering resources to make sure that that happens. And then finally, things like infrastructure migration. So let's say you're wanting to move your code base off from on-prem into a CSP, a cloud service provider. Feature flags are a really great way for you to do that and make sure that that everything is in place to be a smooth process with no downtime for end users. Okay, so we looked at what feature flags are, and in fact, what they look like in code. We talked about why feature flags matter, but how are feature flags managed? Now, you may be saying to yourself, Andrew, you already told me how they're. You have an environment file, and then you create a config, and then from the config, you're putting it into your code. Great. That's amazing, and it works if you're just getting started with feature flags. You can kind of manage them all from those environment variables if you're looking to get started. However, once you start to get beyond those base use cases, you need something that has a little bit more oomph, and that's really where feature flag management comes in. So feature management, and if you haven't heard this term before, today's the day. This is a modern tool set for managing feature flags at scale. So we're talking about hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of flags. Feature management is a necessary piece of that puzzle to ensure that you're able to manage these feature flags and you're not dealing with technical debt and all of these other challenges that a lot of people often see when they think about feature flags. So feature management tools that are out there provide a really great framework for feature flag driven development practices. And this is looking at things like A/B testing and trunk-based development. These tools are specifically built around these practices, but so they provide a great framework for you. And they're really necessary for streamlined flag implementation. So if you're looking to do things like have teams be able to manage flags, if you want to be able to monitor flags and how they work over a long period of time, if you want to be able to have a lot of these super features that you require if you're managing flags at scale, that's what feature management is really there for. So when we look at kind of this feature management, feature flag management, feature flag ecosystem as a whole, there are a growing number of folks that make up this space. Obviously, the company that I work for, DevCycle, is one of those feature flag management platforms that provides a lot of those things that I was talking about, but there are a ton of companies that are out there, a ton of providers that are out there, a ton of platforms that are out there that are doing the great work of feature flag management and allowing for this to happen. Here's some other great examples that you might have heard of: Harness, LaunchDarkly, Flagsmith, ConfigCat. These are all some great examples of feature flag management companies that are allowing for this to happen and products that enable this process really easily. Now, while this ecosystem has been fantastic, and there's lots of people that are doing this feature flag management at scale, in the past couple of years, there's been a brand new kind of player that's come into the scene that has really helped to bring this ecosystem together and to start building things like a solid standard around what feature flagging should look like. So we're not having to worry about things like vendor lock-in. And so we can have sort of a universal community around this world of feature flag management. And that sort of overarching body, that really great organization that's doing that, is OpenFeature. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what OpenFeature is all about in just a second. But the other thing that OpenFeature has done is they've sort of provided a great gateway into the world of feature flag management, sort of coming from that environment variable config, and that's called flag D. And we're going to kind of get an example of what flag D looks like in just a minute in my demo. But OpenFeature and flag D sort of provide a really great gateway into this world of feature flag management by providing a standard through OpenFeature, and then flag D providing sort of the gateway into actually starting to use more complex feature flags in your code. So let's talk about OpenFeature. Now, Stacy talked about this at the top of the show, but at the end of the day, OpenFeature is about standardizing feature flagging for everyone. So like she said, like Stacy said, it's an open specification that provides a vendor agnostic, community-driven API for feature flagging that works with your favorite feature flag management tool. You can kind of see an example of how it works over here to the right. So we have the OpenFeature SDK, and then we have an OpenFeature provider that's provided by one of those many feature flag management platforms that we looked at before. And sort of those two puzzle pieces working together allow you to create your feature flagging client, and then you're able to start to implement feature flags with this open standard that allows you to move back and forth between different feature flag providers in the future, if that's something that you want to do, but also to really adopt this standard in a meaningful way. So what is OpenFeature all about? It's about what we talked about before, avoiding code level lock-in. It's one SDK and any backend. It's all about supporting your favorite tools. And in fact, this standard has been developed with the industry. And then it's really about ultimate flexibility, like speaking your language. There are providers that are in almost every language under the sun. And because of the standard, if you have a language that's not kind of seen, you can actually go out there and sort of use that open standard and API to build your own providers that then allow for that language to be recognized here. And a lot of the feature flag management platforms are building more of these out all the time. Okay, so OpenFeature is great. It's doing some amazing things, but maybe you've never heard of feature flags before. Maybe today's your first day hearing about feature flags, and you might be asking yourself, who exactly is using feature flags? Is this just a thing that is sort of a new trend that's coming in? And so it's all, it's a lot of small projects that are using it. Well, I think there's projects of all sizes that are using it, but I wanted to highlight a few teams that are using feature flags in production. Now, the first two here, these are ones that you might have heard of, Nord Security, so NordVPN and Netlify. So these are two companies that are using the DevCycle platform and their feature flags in production. But we're talking about OpenFeature here. And so I think it's really amazing because there's some fantastic, massive companies that you've definitely heard of that are using OpenFeature feature standards in production. So we've got companies like Dynatrace, eBay, Google, Spotify. All of these have sort of adopted the OpenFeature standard and are using these in production, sort of showcasing how big this OpenFeature standard has become in the world of feature flag management. And while there's lots of folks that are kind of sharing what they're doing with feature flags, I thought it would be great for you to kind of hear directly from somebody who is doing this every day. So this is a great quote from Jason Berry, a senior staff engineer at Netlify. If you've never heard of Netlify, it's a web development platform hosting similar to Vercel and things like that. And you can see here sort of Jason, so kind of backing up a lot of the things that I've said here, like using feature flags allow them to merge features into main before that whole feature is complete. That can help avoid huge PRs and merge conflicts. So just like a little bit of information backing up kind of what we're saying here, that this is a key piece in this development workflow and productivity process that makes feature flags so incredibly valuable. Okay, so we looked at all of this stuff. We talked about where OpenFeature and where feature flags are being used in production, but you probably are still wondering, if you're a developer that's out there, you might be wondering, what does OpenFeature look like in practice, or how does OpenFeature work? So while there's a lot of documentation that's out there, I wanted to put together sort of a real demo so you can kind of see what this process of using OpenFeature in a project actually looks like. And so I recorded a little demo. It's only about 4 minutes that will kind of get up on the screen now, that kind of walks you through what the process is like getting started with OpenFeature. All right. And I'm going to assume that if nobody says anything, our audio is going to be working here in just a second. So I've got my fingers crossed. Here we are in the OpenFeature documentation, where getting started with feature flags is as easy as heading over to the tutorial section and choosing a language and framework where you feel the most comfortable from their getting started tutorials list. Now for me, lucky enough, there's a PHP SDK and Laravel tutorial that we can use, and I'm a big fan of PHP and Laravel, so let's start there. All right, I've gone ahead and set up the Laravel app following the steps in that PHP SDK and Laravel tutorial. And if everything's gone right, you should see something that looks a little bit like this. Now, while the example in the tutorial focuses on an API response, I wanted to give you something a little bit more visual today. And so what we're going to look at feature flagging is going to be this documentation card on our landing page and choose whether to show it or not show it to users based on some targeting criteria. To get started with adding a feature flag to that landing page, we're first going to head over to our web routes file and we're going to install our OpenFeature SDK. Now, I've already gone ahead and done that, but one thing I haven't done is initialize that SDK in our code, which I'm doing right now. Now, after I've gotten that set up, technically I'm good to go to use the OpenFeature API, but I actually haven't added a provider yet. Now, similar to the tutorial, I'm going to be using the flag_d provider. More information about that by checking out the docs. And I'm going to have to install that and then initialize that in our code as well, which is going to look a little something like this. Now that I've installed the OpenFeature SDK and the flag_d provider and have everything working thanks to Docker, we can go ahead and define our new rules in our flags.flagd.json file as outlined in the tutorial. You can see here that I've defined a new flag, show new docs card, and I've set the default variant to on, which means right now it's going to show that card to everyone. Back here in our web routes file, we're almost ready to start using that feature flag on our landing page, but there's a few things that are left to do, primarily to return the response from that flag_d evaluation. Now, in order to do that, we're first going to define a variable to hold that response. And then we're going to pass that response over to our welcome blade, which is where our landing page is pulling all the information that it's displaying, including that new documentation card. Now that we've defined that show new docs card, which is returning true or false based on the evaluation from flag_d, all we have to do is put some conditional logic around the documentation card, which I have up here on my screen, in order to conditionally show it based on our flag_d evaluation. Back over here in our sample Laravel app, you'll notice that not much has changed. And that is because you may remember that we had set the default evaluation in flag_d to be on. Changing that up is as simple as heading back over to our flags.flagd.json file, changing our default variant to off, saving, heading back over to our Laravel app, and clicking refresh. And as you can see, our documentation card is no longer being shown, demonstrating a really simple Boolean feature flag using flag_d and OpenFeature. Thanks, Andrew. I couldn't have said that better myself, but I did. All right, so we looked at what are feature flags. We looked at why feature flags matter. We talked a lot about feature flag management. We talked about what OpenFeature is and the OpenFeature ecosystem. And you got even an example of kind of what this looks like in a really basic Laravel app, kind of following the tutorial that's provided over on the OpenFeature site. But you may be asking yourself, where can you learn more? So you're like, okay, we got into like the base level there. We got our primer, but where can I learn more about this idea of feature flagging? Well, there's some great resources that are out there. So if you have heard of Flagsmith, they were on that list of feature flag providers there. They've done some awesome webinars with Kunal Kushwaha. Definitely check them out. If you go over onto YouTube and search up feature flags and Kunal, you'll find these 3 great streams that have been done there, and they provide a lot of this the same information, but kind of a little bit more focused around that Flagsmith area, but super, super great resources. I also maintain an awesome feature flag management list over on GitHub that you can find by going over to Andrew D. Maclean and Awesome Feature Flag Management. If you're watching this stream, this video, this recording, or if you're live right now, head on over and give it a star. If you've got a resource that you want to share, please do a PR, and I would love to be able to merge it in there. This is a growing list, and we're always looking for new resources that we can share with folks that are interested in getting into this world of feature flags. And then, of course, one of the best resources, and certainly one that I found really, really helpful when I was building out this talk and sort of building out that demo that I just showed you, is the OpenFeature website. And clicking on that tutorials menu, there are some great tutorials in here. Java, JavaScript, Go, PHP. There's also the OpenFeature Playground and lots of other great resources over there. Be sure to go in, check it out, try out building a feature flag in one of these, or building a project with feature flags using one of these projects, using one of these tutorials. And it'll be a really great way for you to start to understand how OpenFeature works. Here's me. If you're interested in connecting with me at all, you can find me on Threads and LinkedIn and GitHub and X/Twitter at Andrew D. Maclean. If you want to reach out directly, you can find me at andrewdmaclean.com. My calendar is up there, and always happy to talk feature flags or just to engage with folks in the OpenFeature and feature flagging community. So that, I'm going to say thanks and thank you. And I'm excited to kind of have some conversations now with y'all about feature flags and OpenFeature. Thanks, Stacy, and everybody else for being here.
Yeah, thank you for that great presentation and the quick little demo that you did there. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the Zoom chat and we'll get to them. But I had a couple that I just wanted to kind of ask while everyone is ruminating and thinking about what they want to ask you about. And, there's a lot of talk around like technical debt and things like that when it comes to technology these days. How do you manage feature flag debt?
Yeah, I think really OpenFeature is kind of the answer to this debt question. I think the way feature flags have been implemented in the past have kind of been ad hoc. And so because you can make a basic feature flag just by creating a variable and pulling it from somewhere, it is really challenging to have any sort of way to be able to go through code and actually be able to kind of identify where feature flags are and how to pull them out. So I think first off, having this open standard is going to allow for a lot of these folks that are in this space to start developing tooling around feature flag cleanup, feature flag management, like over the life cycle of a feature flag. And I know both ourselves at DevCycle and at some other platforms are building out a lot of these tools that provide you ways to see where flags are in the life cycle and to really manage them. I think the other thing here with technical debt is like there's a lot of the conversation around like vendor lock-in. I think that also ties into the technical debt issue. And so I think OpenFeature, again, by being vendor agnostic and providing you a way to just like move back and forth between providers, you're now able to sort of take advantage of tooling that exists around this technical debt that exists on different platforms in a really, really meaningful way. So I think really the answer to that question is OpenFeature. And I say that with all love for everything that all the different folks are doing that have these platforms. But I think the standard that's being created and the community around it, and the fact that everybody is saying technical debt with feature flags means that this is a thing that the whole community is going to come together to solve.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we have Chetan in the chat who says, what an easy to follow presentation. So great job on your presentation, Andrew.
Awesome.
First question is, can you also talk about use cases to help product managers when developers are using feature flags for implementation software? And then we'll get to the second question after you answer the first one.
Yeah, let me parse this for just a second. Can you talk about use cases for product managers when developers are using feature flags for implementation software? I think so if I'm kind of pulling this apart, and you can throw in chat if I'm missing it somehow, but I think what you're saying is like if you have product managers and developers that are kind of both using feature flags, how do you kind of make that work and how do you make that flow? I think the piece that exists within the a lot of the platforms that are out there is that they're specifically designed around team-based interactions. And so you are able, so let's say you, as the product manager, really want to be the one that ultimately says this goes live into production, and to flip the switch on production. You, with a lot of these platforms, actually have the ability around like basic permissions to say, like, developers can go and do all of this testing in all these different environments, but only I, as the product manager, can finally like can press go on actually kind of turning things off in certain environments. So I think permissioning is a big piece there. And then, yeah, I mean, the other piece here would be if you're working with developers who are using feature flags in a different way, and you're looking to kind of have a little bit more of a conversation around how to kind of use this. I think really the piece here is sort of like going into the world of these feature flag management platforms. I feel like I haven't answered your question though, Cheaton. I feel like you're looking for specific use cases. Do you have any more context you can provide in there? And I'm happy to, while I'm answering the second question, I can see if I can actually answer your
The
question
second
directly.
question is just a quick thing on where can we access the presentation to share it, so that they can share with their team. I will just say that Andrew has provided a slide deck. We are also recording this session. So we'll email you the recording link and post it onto the CNCF community page. And Andrew, if you're willing to share even just a PDF, I'll make sure to link that when I send that with the recording link, and we can put that into the YouTube description as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then Chetan, if you want to clarify anything in the Zoom chat for Andrew, so he can expand on your question there, that'd be great too.
Yeah. So maybe while we're waiting for Cheaton to respond, if there is a response there, are there some other questions that we have that are kind of floating around for you, Stacy?
So I think the other thing that we had come in that wasn't a public one was, what do you okay, so there's two questions. So the first one is, do feature flags require you to change your entire approach to development?
100%. You can't use feature flags unless you're trunk-based development. No, don't clip that. No, they don't. I mean, I think like feature flags, I want to find the right way to say this. I think feature flags are a gateway to better development practices. Like at a core level, like once you start using feature flags, you're like, oh, this makes this process of like testing and releasing a lot easier. And so then you are like, oh, I'm doing branch-based development. Do I want to do trunk-based development? And like, do I want to start implementing some of these toolkits? So I think by using feature flags, you will see the light of what you could use feature flags for in terms of your entire development practice. But no, I mean, I think at the core level, start using feature flags in like the really small way within your workflow. That is kind of I think the more important piece here. Feature flags can be used at any scale. They can be used at one feature flag in your entire code base. They can be used at 1 million feature flags in your code base. It's really, really up to you to kind of figure out what that looks like. And once you're ready to kind of level up your development process, that's when you can then sort of say like, okay, here's how feature flags allow me to do that. So I think they're an important part of changing your practices and sort of developing, not better, but developing in a different way. But you absolutely don't actually need them to yeah.
No matter where you are on your feature flagging journey, you can always start where it's easy for you. You don't have to be at this certain maturity level or anything like that. Just start where you are. So Cheaton has now typed in some clarification. So
Awesome.
So they're saying, how does it help product managers? Examples I can think of are: one, release features early, even if the feature isn't fully complete, feature only ready for Chrome browser plus a small user segment plus one geography. Or two, showing off your prototype in production to senior leadership or buy-in, or website customers to get early feedback. Or three, easier cross-team collaboration with clear governance ownership. Hope this clarifies. Thanks, Cheaton.
Yeah, that's all. Those are like three great. I feel like I can't even provide any better. You did my job for me. This is what I aim to do in all these talks, is get people to do my work for me. Yeah, I think that's it. It is a it is a really powerful tool within this product management space of like, yeah, you want to get the testing, you want to get feedback, and you're going out to the customer. You as the like through any, like even with just like a config file, like in like an environment variable, you can say like, I only want to show it to people that have like this specific thing in their profile. And as long as you can read that, then you are able to kind of use feature flags to target in those different environments. Obviously, a lot of these platforms that are out there allow that to happen in a bigger way. But all three of those use cases that you listed in chat and that Stacy just shared, these are like, this is why these matter. Like these matter for DevOps practitioners. In fact, like DevCycle itself, the company started out as an A/B testing platform focused on marketing and product. It was like built for these folks. And then DevCycle was kind of built as a piece of the platform, the Tabletix platform that DevCycle was before. So like we come from like, and I think a lot of us in this space come from this place of like helping product managers to do their job better. And then we realized that this is a tool that can really be really impactful if we kind of go developer first. But like even a lot of the platforms that are out there that are integrating with the OpenFeature standard are kind of like give you a dashboard that allows for you to have all of this control and to do a lot of these definitions as a product manager. And like the developers can kind of worry about how to get it in there. You have the control to kind of turn things on and off really easily. Yeah, so those are great use cases. I love all of them.
Nice job. Cheaton says we should partner up for a presentation together. So I'll let you guys connect offline. So the last thing that I would say is, we're getting close to time anyway, but what do you see as sort of, the future of feature flagging?
Yeah, so I realize that this sounds like I'm just hyping OpenFeature because this is an OpenFeature user group, but I really do think that if you look at every single technology and sort of the cloud native open source space over the past few years, community has been the thing that has brought them from 0 to 60. I think growing the OpenFeature community is really going to be the thing that helps guide where feature flagging goes in the future. I think together as a voice of all of these different players, if we can sort of say this is a powerful thing, we can start to help others implement this together. And so I think like OpenFeature and a lot of the projects and things like this user meeting group are really the future, is more of these, more showing the use cases, building this out. I think there's a lot of conversations right now around AI and how AI can be helpful. And there are some folks that are in this ecosystem that are building tools that kind of help you do that. I think that might be a useful tool in terms of the code cleanup process. I think that might be a useful tool in sort of showing you in your code where you can put feature flags. So I do think that there's a lot of these tools that are out there in the world right now that are going to allow you to implement feature flags in a much easier way, even if you're just getting introduced to them. And then I think the final piece is just getting deeper integrations with the platforms and technologies and frameworks that you're already using. We saw today that there was a brand new feature flag company that like literally, or platform that just launched like today, that are focused on like Next.js and Svelte and a couple of these other frameworks. Lots of folks are in this space. There's some feature flag providers that are just for specific languages and frameworks and like technologies. There's some that are like Git-based feature flags and like all of these pieces. And so I think the future is really anywhere that you are dealing with the deployment and release process, you're going to start to see feature flags as like a really, really meaningful part of this process. And so if you don't know what feature flags are and you're not implementing them in your projects yet, do it now. Use OpenFeature. Start to get into this world in a really safe and friendly way. And I think this community and this standard are going to be the way to make sure that everybody can do this and do it to the best abilities that they can.
Amazing. Thank you. And I will just remind everyone, openfeature.dev is the website where you can check out all the OpenFeature stuff. There's docs there. There's an ecosystem page, tutorials, and then that will, of course, link you back to the GitHub, which is github.com/open-feature. So yeah, and then join us on Slack. We're under the CNCF Slack. There is a hashtag OpenFeature channel that you can join us there, talk to the maintainers. I'm sure Andrew's loitering around there, checking things out, making sure that he's chatting with folks there too. So we have, tons of people there. We always are open for more people to join us. And yeah, I mean, Andrew, that was a fantastic presentation. Thanks for everything. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up since we didn't have any more questions come in. But we appreciate you all, and we hope to see you on the next one. I think we have the next one coming up, I think mid to late February, and Pete Hodgson will be joining us there for, I think you may have even referenced one of his articles on the martinfowler.com site.
I did.
So yeah, Pete will be joining us next time. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Take care.